years. And I just wonder, carrying that forward, to what extent you feel, whilst I agree that one has to put in place a lot of economic incentives in terms of green behaviour, but to what extent does that have to be complemented by actual legislation, sort of in terms of people's behaviour, in the same way that the smoking ban took place and has been sort of driven from public sort of behaviour, I suppose?
Good question. Polly, would you like to answer that?
Yeah, legislation plays a very important role. Legislation actually shapes our behaviour. It creates our norms. We have laws, therefore we accept something as being normal. For instance, slavery was completely normal and acceptable until Wilberforce came along and actually pushed forward the legislation that then created that shift in consciousness to suddenly becoming unacceptable. Now, of course, we still do have slavery in a muted form, but what we do have are the tools to fight it. And Amnesty International, of course, are not going to be out of a job tomorrow. But the thing is that actually you had a seismic shift in consciousness. And seismic shift in consciousness is what's required just now. I mean, you are a very receptive audience, that's why you're here. You've kind of got it. But you know, the majority of the world are still sort of out there, maybe a bit open to it, maybe not, maybe closed to it. They haven't gotten the message here. They haven't really understood it. There is a seismic shift in consciousness. And consciousness is a very proactive stage in one's being. It actually empowers you to take action, to move forward yourself, to move forward and make sure that you see things happening in your life and others' lives to make a better world. That's certainly happening to me. So laws are about facilitating that, by putting those laws in place, by actually putting in a law that creates an international piece of legislation saying that, okay, it's now illegal to pollute the planet by creating rights of the planet, for instance, which is what I'm working on. Then actually you create a seismic shift in consciousness at the same time. People start seeing things differently as well.
Excellent. And are there any steps between now and having some strong legislation on climate change? Any important steps that you think need to be taken, or is it something we can just step into immediately?
Well, everything has steps. It's just a matter of how fast you step or run. And as far as I'm concerned, it's about running very, very fast here. I'm working on a universal declaration of planetary rights. It is my intention that we will have this actually in the General Assembly by the end of this year. The drafting will take, and it will be open to the public as well to assist with this, that will take maximum 2 years, and we should have this legislation in place by 2011. There's no reason why not. Universal Declaration of Human Rights was put in place in 2 years. And the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was born out of a humanitarian crisis. We now have an environmental crisis, so we can act just as fast. Nothing needs to stop that. It all comes down to will.
Thank you, Polly, and all power to your elbow. Let's move on to the next question. What is the role of business in reducing carbon emissions satisfactorily? Tom, you're a businessman.
Thank you. I think all businesses need to look very carefully at what they do and how they do it. Is their activity actually part of the problem? And if it is, what is a way in which they could make it part of the solution? For example, we have very big oil companies in this country, BP and Shell. They both started talking a lot about environmental technology and their efforts in wind and solar. And my view is that not very much has come out of it, and that's a great shame. These are the kind of companies that could be saying, well, actually, we're part of the problem right now, but we have the resources and the technology and the manpower available to us to become a huge part of the solution. And we've got 10, 15, 20 years to move our whole business plan from the problem or to the solution, starting today. Now, on a more local level, I think basically any business locally, where I'm from in Brighton, there are lots of ethical businesses, and they're really doing well out of more awareness in Brighton and more awareness nationally. And they need to really spread the word and say this is the way to do business in the future. You can motivate people, and really you can be a real force for good in your local community if you say this is how we want our services to be provided, and this is how we're going to do it for you. And you can then see what the effects are on the balance sheet. Ultimately, green businesses will do well, and other businesses will, they are the businesses of yesterday. And green businesses need to really spread that message and tell people that this is the way forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. And I have heard that many of our medium-sized businesses, Cooperative Bank, Triodos Bank, the Phone Co-op, have done quite well during the recession because they're considered to be trustworthy, so that's a good sign for business. But Alan, you advise a lot of very, very big businesses. What do you feel that big business can do in reducing carbon emissions?
I think that the answer is linked to the previous question about the role of government and the discussion we had on legislation. If you just see the recent publicity that's been over electric cars and a sort of a growing government support for electric cars, and you see what's in this room, there's no way that even that small gesture wouldn't have happened if electric cars didn't exist, if the technology didn't exist. So the role of business in that particular example is to develop the technology and give Gordon Brown, the ministers and the public officials the confidence that if they did give that public policy support for this new low carbon technology, that the technology will be there, it will be affordable, that the customers will get what they want from that car. If that car broke down, it wouldn't work, and people will reject it. So the thought leadership on this ultra low carbon world actually has to start in the product innovation and product development department of these big businesses. And I agree totally with the oil companies. What can they do as energy providers? But all the other people, from video cameras to cars. Government can't legislate for something if it doesn't exist. And government and business has to be there first, then public policy will support to squeeze out the dirty end of the other side of the car spectrum, which aren't here.
Excellent. So, big business should be providing solutions even if they're not rolling them out to begin with. That's very clear. Matt?
Well, I think businesses can move very much more quickly than governments, and clearly, therefore, they are the sort of seats of creativity in terms of the solutions we need. But on the scale of responsibility, I'd put them at the lowest. They're least responsible because ultimately they're reactionary. They react to the society that we have. They provide the products and services that we demand. So, as with a lot of my thoughts, it always comes down to the consumer more so than the business itself. So I'd say they're low on the on responsibility, but high on the opportunity. And actually, when it comes, thinking back to the comment about regulation and legislation, when it comes to regulating, it's much easier to do that to businesses than it is to individuals, because individuals don't tend to react very positively to constraints on their behavior, whereas businesses want a level playing field. Industry needs to know where it stands and how to make longer term investments. So I think there's a lot of possibilities here, but we have to tell them again what we want, otherwise they're not going to deliver.
So that's, as the public, we have to tell them, we have to tell business what we want.
Yeah, public and government.
And government. So spend... Okay, just a second. Polly, would you like to comment on that?
You're going to think I'm really hardcore radical here. I think we're completely namby-pambing around business. At the end of the day, even Sir David Stern has said this,